There are exactly 84 different mobs in Minecraft, and if I asked you to name the hardest one to beat in survival mode, you would probably mention the Ender Dragon or the Wither or something like that. But what if I told you that compared to some of Minecraft's lesser known mobs, these two are actually pieces of cake? Now I know what you're thinking, how about the Warden? Isn't the Warden Minecraft's hardest mob? No, it isn't. It might be a little difficult to get far enough away from it to where you can shoot arrows at it without having to have the darkness effect applied to you, but once you can do that, you will be able to just spam arrows at it and it will actually be taken out very quickly. We can even enchant our bow with the Power 5 enchantment or another special enchantment, and by using this enchanted bow, we will be able to do a whole lot of damage to the Warden very quickly, making the Warden a complete piece of cake. So if the Warden is actually so easy to defeat, then how about a mob which the Minecraft wiki claims is literally invulnerable? But it isn't. You see, even though this mob, which is called the Creaking, may at first glance appear to be completely immune to any of your attempts to damage it, it actually has one fatal weakness. You see, if you punch it, these sparks will emanate from it, and these will actually lead you to the tree which contains its Creaking heart. And by breaking through the logs and breaking through the resin, we will be able to find this Creaking heart and break it, and that will actually destroy the Creaking. So this mob is not actually invulnerable. But that leads into the next question of which mob could actually be Minecraft's hardest mob then. And that leads us to a structure which is in a biome right next to the Pale Garden, because this woodland mansion is where two great candidates emerge. First up is the Vindicator. The Vindicator is a powerful illager that wields an axe and is completely able to go right through your shield, so don't even think about trying to block its attack. You're just going to have to go in and use your own axe or sword to try and get it first. But what about the Evoker? The Evoker is probably more powerful than the Vindicator because the Evoker actually has multiple spells and tricks at its disposal. If we try to run up and just attack it, it will actually summon these smaller Vex mobs to attack us first and whittle down our health. We'll also still have to deal with the Vindicators that also inhabit the woodland mansion, but eventually we'll be able to get close to the Evoker and it will just summon these fangs out of the ground to do even more damage to us. But eventually, if we're able to avoid the Vexes and Vindicators, we will be able to get close enough to the Evoker and get some good hits in, and we will be able to defeat it, and it will drop for us a wonderful item called the Totem of Undying, and that's a pretty powerful item, and it would make probably the Evoker the most powerful mob if it actually could use it, but it can't. So I'm actually going to say that of these two illagers which inhabit the woodland mansion, the Vindicator might actually be the more powerful one because of a secret Easter egg, where when you name a Vindicator Johnny, it will actually be able to attack other mobs, and it can take out creepers, skeletons, pretty much any overworld mob, but it actually doesn't fare too well against the piglin mobs from the nether. So how about we test these out then? The piglin brutes are one of the strongest mobs that you can find in the nether, but are they Minecraft's hardest mob? Well, no, because as it turns out, they're not very good at pathfinding to you, and they even jump off ledges sometimes by themselves, so it's not even difficult to defeat them. They defeat themselves. So how about another nether mob, the Blaze? No, this is also not Minecraft's hardest mob because it is just an intermediate step on your way to fighting the Ender Dragon. You pick up some blaze rods and they are really not too difficult to defeat. But if the nether doesn't have any serious challenges for us then how about a mob which does not spawn naturally in any of Minecraft's 3 dimensions? I am of course talking about the secret mob known as the Illusioner. This mob is a secret illager, and if you thought the Evoker and Vindicator were bad, well, just wait until you see this one. This guy casts a blindness spell on you and then he makes himself invisible and then spawns all these clones of himself, so it's pretty difficult to find him to even get a hit on him in the first place. But by getting enough hits on him, you will eventually be able to take him out, and he really does not pose that much of a challenge. It's basically just the challenge of avoiding him and avoiding his clones and actually finding out where the real one is hiding. So let's get into the next mob then, which might actually be a bit more challenging, but is also a bit harder to find because unlike with the Illusioner, which you can fight in any modern version of Minecraft since 1.12 when it was added, for this mob, the Giant, you actually have to go back to an older version to fight it because they actually removed its AI quite a while ago. So you have to go in and you actually have to go back to snapshot 18W50A to go fight this one, and boy is it powerful. You're going to really struggle for this one, well, except for the fact that it has one pretty severe weakness, which is the daytime. Because as with any zombie mob, the Giant burns in the sunlight and it is pretty weak about it. Now it is of course able to get into water and it is able to, avoid burning just by doing that, but when it's in water it also slows down and it actually makes it possible for you to take it out without that much difficulty. You just use your bow, you can bow spam it as I did with the Warden, or you can also just use your diamond sword or whatever sword you have or axe, and you will be able to take it out without too much difficulty. And that's kind of sad because the Giant is the only mob ever removed by Minecraft because it was actually considered too overpowered. So I don't know why Notch even thought it was too overpowered, because you can just take it out pretty easily. But you know what? Let's move into our next mob now, and we're actually going to take a look at some smaller mobs which by themselves are pretty easy. First up is the Cave Spider. The Cave Spider is essentially a buffed version of the regular spider. It's able to inflict you with poison damage, and they spawn in these little dungeons in the mine shafts, and it works out pretty well for them. But since not a lot of them spawn at once, they end up being pretty easy to take out. So definitely not Minecraft's Minecraft's hardest mob. But there's another structure that is often found underground right next to these abandoned mine shafts, and that would of course be, you know what it is the stronghold. And the stronghold is of course notorious for containing the portal to fight the Ender Dragon, but it also contains another mob exclusive to it, and actually it's not exclusive to it, you can sometimes find them in mountain biomes, but it's the silverfish. And everyone loves the silverfish, right? They're tiny little bugs, they go and attack you, and they even summon more of their friends out of the walls. But as it turns out, they're actually not even that powerful, because if you can take them out in one hit, they're actually going to be able to not summon any of their friends out of their walls, and so they are basically useless, and you can pretty much easily rule them out as being Minecraft's hardest mob. But with that out of the way, let's stop dilly-dallying now, and let's find out which Minecraft mob is the hardest to beat. Now to do that, we need a useful criterion of how hard it is to defeat that mob, and I find that first of all, we need to find out how hard it is to even get to the mob. The Ender Dragon, for example, requires both Ender Pearls and Blaze Rods to go to the end and to actually be able to fight it, so that of course means that you're going to need to go to the Nether to fight the Ender Dragon, unless of course you use a version prior to version 1.9, because in version 1.8.9 and below, you were actually able to trade for Eyes of Ender without needing to go to the end. So trading with these cleric villagers here, we were able to trade in lots of our rotten flesh to get lots of emeralds, and by leveling up these cleric villagers all the way up to tier level 3, we were able to trade for some Eyes of Ender without even needing to go to the Nether in the first place. Now, unlike the Ender Dragon, the Wither has always required that you go to the Nether to be able to fight it, but the Nether also poses the Wither's biggest weakness because you can just spawn it inside the bedrock ceiling and trap it and take it out easily. So what mob that requires you to go to the Nether could actually be harder than the Wither? Well, that would of course be a mob that requires you to brew a potion to fight it, because brewing a potion has always required you to be able to go to the Nether first to be able to brew potions. Previously in version 1.8.9 and below, it was that you would have to get a blaze rod to craft a brewing stand, and now as of version 1.9 and above, you can find brewing stands in generated structures, but you still need blaze powder to be able to use the brewing stand. And of course, also what we need to use the brewing stand is going to be some glass bottles, so we will go ahead and craft those, and we will of course fill them up with water, and we will place them into our brewing stand. Now of course, as any of you who have ever brewed a potion before in Minecraft know, the first thing you do is you put your nether ore into the brewing stand, and that will produce for you the awkward potion. And we are about to put a pufferfish into the brewing stand as well, because that is going to allow us to create a special potion that is of course going to be one of the best potions, the water breathing potion, and that will allow us to breathe underwater without fear of drowning. And this potion is going to be very important for going in to fight the mob in the structure that we were about to fight it in, because this is going to be a pretty difficult mob to fight, and I do think that based on all the characteristics of this fight, you know, going underwater, having to use a potion, you can technically do it without a potion, but it's kind of difficult, so you may as well just use the potion. I do think that is probably the best decision, and we're going to go fight it. Now, unfortunately, it is kind of a difficult mob, because you have to get underwater, and you get into this little area here where you end up getting taken out a lot. But one of the things is, though, is that you might think, oh, well, why don't I just mine blocks? Well, you could if you used milk to get over the mining fatigue effect, but if you were using milk to get over the mining fatigue effect, that would also result in your water breathing effect getting out, so that would not help you very much, would it? And especially considering that the mining fatigue effect just comes right back anyways. That's not going to help you in this case. Now, since we're underwater, we are going to have to try to use our bow. It's pretty difficult to use the bow underwater because obviously the arrow is slowed down by the water, and as I said, you can really just bow spam most mobs in Minecraft, and I think that's what makes this one a little bit more difficult, is with Elder Guardian, it is going to be a bit more difficult because you can still bow spam, but you know what, it's underwater, so I think that does at least somewhat increase the difficulty as compared to most mobs in Minecraft, which are really super easy to defeat. But with that in mind, that is actually going to be the end for this video. I want to say thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. If you did not enjoy it, leave a dislike, and be sure to subscribe for new Minecraft videos every so often. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please do go ahead and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers as soon as possible. I don't know when to set a deadline for. We'll just see. Please subscribe. Bye.